So these tools, the purpose of these tools is to save time. And most of these tools were developed in the occurrence where you say, man, there's got to be a better way to do this. Why am I spending all this time doing things one at a time? So we're going to cover probably about 6 of the general tools that will apply to anyone, whether you're an architect, an engineer, production specialist, anything. There are some other tools that we won't cover. For those, you can look in the documentation. If you click on the documentation on the toolbar, it'll bring you to the user's guide where there's instructions and different things. So first, I'm going to start with probably the most popular tool, which is the parameter transformer. It's known because it can get things out to Excel where you can edit them and import things, but there are some other features that I want to kind of show you how it's broken up. So if you're working in a plan, and I just have open a lighting plan here, and if I selected a whole bunch of elements, if I am using the Revit built-in tools and I wanted to filter for, say, just the exit signs, I could come down here to my filter. I've got 606 elements, and the only thing I can use is category. So I could isolate lighting fixtures, but I can't get any more granular than that unless I wanted to build a custom schedule or different things. So one of the first things was the parameter transformer allows you to find any data that's inside your model. So I could find elements based on their data, I could find data based on their elements, et cetera. But you'll notice as soon as I come up on the right hand, it shows me those same 606 elements, but I've got categories listed, I've got families listed, types. I can automatically just say, I'm going to check none, and I only wanted the exit signs. Okay, so I'll just hit isolate. And so when I isolate that, it's going to change my selection. I can even see here in the background exactly where those exit signs are. So that's kind of like the quick filter. If I'm just working and I wanted to find all of the fixtures that were emergency or all of the ductwork that's greater than 10 feet long or whatever, I can do that. I can do it for my selected items, current view, or the entire project. So as an example, I wanted to show you that you can build filters on top of filters. I can either use presets, I can manage presets, so I can create my own presets of things I want to search for, or I can use a custom filter and I can do any categories in the entire model. So I'm going to just type in sheets, and we can say I want to find, so there's 124 sheets in the model, and down here I can say I want to filter it further by a parameter. So let's say sheet name. So I'm going to say sheet name contains. Let's do a contains. So I've got lots of options here. Contains, greater than, starts with, all sorts of things. So contains, I don't know. Let's do level 1. Level 1. So I'm just going to hit filter. So of the 124, there's 25 sheets that are of level 1, and then I can further go further. I can say, well, I want the sheet number to contain, let's just say P. So that would probably find all of my plumbing sheets. So if I hit filter, of those 25, 6 are plumbing. And then from there, I can do whatever I want. I can set parameters. I can export things to Excel. I could actually find out who created them. It's got access to the creator of the elements. So you have access to all sorts of information. So I'll go through some of the different features on the tabs across the top just to see what we can do. So I'm just going to go back to the entire project, and I'm going to use a preset. So if I use preset views, so I've got 347 views. Again, I might want to say, well, I only want plan views, and maybe I don't want view templates, and hit isolate. What I've done is in my whole database, this project that's a database, I've said I want to do something with all the views. The modify tab, most people skip the modify tab and they go straight to Excel because you can do all sorts of cool stuff in Excel. But today I want to show you why you may not want to skip the modify tab on some cases. So the modify is meant to be able to do a lot of modification to all of your selection all at once. So in this case, I might say I'm going to do find and replace. So I'm going to do find, let's do level 1, and maybe somebody said, hey, we're not calling it level 1 anymore, we're going to call it first floor. First floor. and you're like, oh, I've got to change every single one of those, and you can go on, you could create a schedule to do it, you can kind of do different things, or you can just say, hey, I want to find and replace level 1 with first floor, and I'll hit modify parameters. Oh, hold on, I'm looking at, sorry, I skipped a step. Sheet number, I'm not looking at sheet number, I want to look in sheet name. Sheet name, or just name. View name, because we're views. Sorry, I was on the wrong one. Okay, view name, and I'm going to hit modify parameters. There we go, we get to see it live, what it's doing. So over here on the left, everything that used to be level 1 is now first floor. So just as a recap, we select what parameter we want to change. So talking about skipping things, I skipped that part. I want to say what parameter I want to change, and I can set them all, find and replace level 1 to first floor. I can do all sorts of funny things here. I could copy from parameters. So if I wanted to say, I mean, I could, you can look on the list here. If I wanted to say element ID and I wanted to set the view name to be the element ID, or if I wanted to number them sequentially. So let's say you had all of your mechanical equipment and you want to renumber them. Architects like to renumber doors or rooms or whatever else. It's got some tools for doing that sequentially. The parameter statistics button here, if you select a parameter, like let's say I had ductwork or equipment and I wanted to know the length, or I wanted to know the airflow, or if I wanted to know something, when you click on parameter statistics, I'll click on it now, I don't think it'll even do anything. It's only for numerical things. It'll tell you the sum, it'll tell you the average is non-zero, the high, the low. It gives you a lot of numerical information. So you could find the total length of ductwork, you could find the total airflow of all selected equipment or diffusers, or whatever else. So there's some stuff there. Now, also this delete button. This delete button is actually more powerful than the delete button when you're in Revit, because you can filter for view filters that have duplicate names or whatever else, and you can hit delete. Where in Revit, you may have to delete them one at a time. You may not have access to delete certain things. This will actually allow you to delete. You can delete shared parameter definitions out of the database. You can do all sorts of stuff. It can be very powerful in the right hands. So let's go ahead and we're going to do the Excel tab. But for that one, I'm actually going to jump to a different project. This is the Autodesk built project, the sample project that comes with it. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to export all spaces. And so if I go to the entire project, this one happens to be a preset. So I'll go to spaces. There's 89 spaces in the project. And I'm going to go to Excel. Once I click on the Excel tab, I've got all those same parameters. I'm going to go with name. So I want to export. So you just select all the stuff you want to export. Number, let me export level, and anything else. I could do some airflow calculator, whatever's in there. But I'm just going to hit export. And so those 89 spaces, when I click export to Excel, it brings it up here in Excel so I can see all of the data. Now, there's a couple really cool things that you can do. Now, most people know that if I come in here and I start renaming these, that data will, I can call this David's space one. Let's see if I can rename a few of these. Anyway, whatever I name in here, when I import back into Excel or into Revit, it will make all those changes. But what a lot of people don't know, and so this is where you get a little bit of extra treatment, is you can actually add parameters that don't even exist in Revit. So if I wanted to say, here's a true story, we exported a whole bunch of spaces, and the owner said, hey, I've got a lot of sensors that are out there that I'm building in there, and I want that sensor data in the Revit model so that I can coordinate it with my facilities management software. And so they said, here, I'll give you a list of all the sensor IDs and what room they belong in, and I want that data in the model. So of course we said, all right, we'll charge you for 2 weeks worth of data entry, and we'll get that done for you. So what we really did is we said sensor ID, let's say occupancy. occupancy. Next one could be sensor ID. Let's say airflow. And I'll just create one more. Sensor ID, I'll just call it temp for temperature. And we took the data that they gave us. So I'm just going to create random data, but we just hit copy and paste. So let's say B1, B2, and we'll call this C1, C2. So those who know about creating shared parameters know that you've got to specify a shared parameter file. You then have to pick what type of parameter. You've got to save it to the parameter file. Then you've got to go back into Revit and you've got to say, I want to add this as a project parameter. Then you just have to say which categories you want to apply it to those categories and all that stuff. And then you have to start filling in the data. You got to do a lot of data entry. So I just hit Control S to save. And in the parameter transformer, there's this button here that says Enable New Parameter Creation. So if you've created new columns that didn't exist, when you hit Import, I'm going to go ahead and hit Import. It's going to ask me, hey, are any of these parameters new? Like, which ones do you want to create? And so I'm going to say, hey, these are the 3 that I want to create, and I hit Proceed. What that does is it creates them as instance parameters that are text. And so it tells me here, hey, these following didn't exist and I created them. Not only did it create them on the right category and it filled out the data at the same time. So if I went to a space schedule and now under fields, I could look to see if they now exist, and they do. So I've got my fields. And so with just copying and pasting into Excel, I could actually fill in all of that data for all of those things. So when a contractor says, hey, we want to add these VICO parameters or these, whatever parameters for this quantity takeoff that we're doing, and we'd like them to be inserted into all of your elements of all the correct categories, you say, sure, we're going to charge you for this many weeks of data. You say, as long as you give it to us in an Excel format or a CSV, and then you hit copy paste, and then you just have to make sure not to give it to them too quickly, or else they'll know it didn't take you that long. So you got to build in a delay there. So now I've got this in the way. Let's see. So let's close that. So that's sort of the Excel. Again, Excel, you can go out to Excel, export lots of parameters, and then you can edit them in Excel and bring them back in. And it's just so much quicker than having to build custom schedules. You can export schedules. If you've already got schedules built in Revit, you can just select that schedule. I'll just show you that again if I go back to the parameter transformer. If I didn't want to actually filter for anything, I could actually, since it's already filtered in Revit, I can just say a Revit schedule, and I can click on space schedule. And then I can say use my scheduled elements as a selection set. And so I've got those same 89 again. And so I didn't have to do the filtering. If I already had a schedule, I can say, I want to export that schedule. And it already knows which parameters are on that schedule. And so it can export that to Excel. And you can modify it in Excel where you can do formulas. Some people will export Revit data like room areas or different things to Excel. That way they can import it into maybe train trace or into some other calculation, voltage drop and short circuit calculation data. And they work on that data, and then they end with data in Excel, and then they can just import that data back into Revit. So you can use the Revit data to perform your calculations outside of Revit, and then you could bring that data back in. So it's accurate and it's based on Revit data. So for the transform tab, we're going to go back over to my other sample. And before I start, I'll tell you what that transform tab does or what its purpose is. So the transform tab, which you're about to see, what it does is it collects the location information from anything you've selected, and then you can use that location information to create anything else. So what that means is I could say for every desk in the linked model, I want to create a floor box receptacle in this model, or a wall receptacle. Or for every VAV box, I want to create an electrical connection. Or for every outlet that is in a room that contains the word office, I want to create a data jack 6 inches to the right of that outlet. So you can do all sorts of things. Also does linear things. So if you want to say for this pipe run, I want you to create a pipe hanger every 10 feet along that length. It will do that. I want to take this pipe length and I want to create a cable tray 2 feet below it using the same path. You can do all that stuff. So we're not going to show all those examples, but I wanted to show you one pretty cool example. In this one is that in this lighting plan, there are these decorative pendants in this lobby. If I click on this, this is actually a DWG. It's a two-dimensional AutoCAD drawing that was brought in. Now, if I explode this in Revit, each one of these actually becomes an element. It becomes an import symbol element. But that element has location data. So I'm just going to select all instances in view. And what I can do when I go back to the parameter transformer, again, this can apply to lots of different things, but just want to show you this particular example. When you click on the transform tab, anything that's over here in that you've got selected, it calculates the location data and it will show you all the locations. So these happen to be points as opposed to lines or arcs or something else. And it shows you where those points are located in the project. So this is locations. You can use some ray casting to find locations around the perimeter of a room. You can say, I want to offset. So these are all at 0. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a light. I'm going to create a Revit light at each of these locations. Let's just say 9 feet. So I'm going to do a 9-foot offset. So then when I apply that, those zeros all turn to 9. So this is the new location where I'm going to create new elements. And so category, let's go to lighting fixtures. And let's see if I can find a decorative pendant somewhere on here. So here's a decorative pendant. So I'm going to create this family and type at each one of these locations, and you can create more than one family and type. Since it came from AutoCAD, it doesn't know what the orientation should be. So I'm going to tell it that if you don't know, do it horizontal, meaning on a ceiling or a floor. Vertical would be on a wall. And I'm going to go ahead and just delete the source elements because I want to replace the CAD in this case. So you can keep the CAD or whatever you're judging from. And I do have the option of transferring parameter values as well. So that's used. I use that sometimes with mechanical equipment. If I want to say create an electrical connector at the mechanical equipment, I also want to sometimes transfer that mechanical ID or something so that I can link them in the parameter linker or something else to have that information match. So I'm just going to hit create elements at location, and I've already noticed that. So I'm on the e-power work set, so that's an issue because I'm on the wrong work set. I should be on the lighting work set. So what that means is you're not going to see what I just created, but I can fix that. Hold on. Let me just go to 3D sections. Lots of options here. We're not going to go through them, but I use this one a lot. I'm just going to draw a box around this area to show me what it is in 3D because it didn't show up on my plans. I'm like, what's going on here? Let me see if it actually exists in the model. So all I have to do is draw a box around the region. And yes, they actually are in the model. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to hit select all instances in the entire project. And we're going to correct this. So the work set's E power. I'm going to put this on E lighting. Okay. All right. So when I do that, they should show up on my lighting plan. And so ta-da, I now have lights on my lighting plan. But I'm noticing something else. 9 feet was cool, but it's not exactly on the ceiling. So if I come in here and I'm looking at these, in fact, I've got multiple ceiling heights. So I'm going to right click, let me select all instances, and let's do the project because it should be only these. I'm going to use a different tool. Let's go to raycast. Let's raycast move up. And we're going to use the architectural for the geometry, and I'm going to hit OK. So what that'll do is it searches the architectural geometry. It says where's the closest ceiling, and so I didn't actually have to coordinate any of these heights. Looks like these ones are on the right soffit. These ones are up there. So that was pretty cool. So another trick up your sleeve, if you want to lay everything out at 4 feet or 9 feet and then just have it fix it later, you could do that too. Not encouraging you to be lazy, just encouraging you to save time. So anyway, that's the transform tab. Again, so many different uses that you can do that. We talked about linear things. All of these tools that I've discussed will work with linked models, meaning you can filter for linked data. You could filter for linked rooms, linked plumbing equipment. You can say for all toilet fixtures in the linked model, I want to create this type of connector or something in my current one, or the gather electrical information from a linked model and transfer it to electrical fixtures in this model, or you know, whatever. So lots of different use cases for that, and many that I probably haven't even thought of. So just to round this tool out, and we're spending a lot of time on this tool, and I realize that, but that's because it is probably one of the most popular and one of the most powerful. The last tool here, the purge tools, usually this is just when you want to clean up an architectural background, or you want to make the file size small, or you're sending something out and you don't want some of your proprietary data. Basically, you click here, click purge selected categories, and you're done. Or you can choose things that you don't want purged. It's not something you want to do in a live model. In fact, if you click it, it'll say, hey, make sure you're not in your current model and that you know what you're doing. But that rounds out the parameter transformer. What I want to cover next is the parameter scheduler, because this comes up a lot when you have elements you want to schedule and you're getting content, families from different sources. So especially mechanical, because mechanical equipment, there's so many different sizes and everything else. What I did is I created these elements, and the family name is cool VAB from the internet. What that means is, hey, I needed a piece of equipment, I downloaded it, but those who have worked in Revit, you know that as soon as you do that and you've got your standard schedule. So if I go to, let me go to my schedules and find VAB schedule. So if I'm looking at a VAB schedule, I've got all these different types. Okay, well, I need to fill out this data. I'm hitting keys on my keyboard, nothing is happening. And so I wonder why, and those who have done this before don't wonder why, because they know that, hey, it won't work because you don't have the same shared parameters. The shared parameters that the manufacturer uses are not the shared parameters that you use. Okay, well, if I'm a user, I don't really care, I just want it to work. So for those people that don't care, we just go to parameter scheduler. If I'm on a schedule, it automatically jumps to the second tab and says, hey, on your current schedule, here's all the parameters that you're missing. I said, that's great, fix it. So I click a button. In one button, it says add missing parameters to the families. It says, hey, I'm done. Let me just close this and let me get back to work. So now I can type whatever I want here. Well, it has to be a number in this case, but I can start setting all this data. All of this stuff is now editable because it has the right shared parameters. So just from a really quick standpoint, if you need something scheduled and it's not working, you click one button and it fixes it. Now, besides being a one button fixer, there are a lot of other buttons in there. So for those people who do care a little bit more, let's go back into the tool just to take a look. So if I open it from a floor plan, it goes to this page instead of the second tab. So the second tab has all your schedules, and you can click on any schedule and it'll tell you any parameters that are missing from the schedule. But if I'm in the family editor, or even if I'm in the project and I know that I need shared parameters, okay, I need shared parameters, maybe I need them from a template. So I can create a template and say, hey, I just downloaded some VAVs. Okay, well, I could have come down here to say VAV, and then I can say apply, and I can say apply to a folder of families, apply to selected elements, apply to project parameters. I can change these. I can save as a template. One thing that you can do in a template, so these are the templates over here. On the template, I can save not only parameters, but I can actually tell it to replace a parameter. So if I'm downloading a whole bunch of stuff from GreenHeck or Train or whatever, I can say, hey, here's my GreenHeck conversion, and I want to replace their voltage with our voltage. I want to replace their airflow with our airflow or whatever. You can set default values, formulas, tooltips. You can save those in your template. So every time you use that template, that additional data gets put in there as well. I can also say, I want to get shared parameters from other places in my current project. So if you're in the family editor, the options are slightly different, but in the current project, I can do selected elements. I think I didn't have a selected elements, but I could select, for example, 2 elements, and I could transfer parameters from one element to another without even having to go to the family editor, without having to know where the shared parameter file is, without having to do any of that stuff. It can transfer without having to do those 10 steps that you would normally be required. There's product parameters or a shared parameter file. On a shared parameter file, I could say, hey, I've got this list that I want from that template, and then maybe I want 3 more from an element, and then I want these other ones from this shared parameter file. The point is, I can actually mix and match as many sources as I want. Maybe the architect says, hey, here's the title block shared parameters that we want you to use. You don't have to edit your current shared parameter file. You don't have to switch your shared parameter file settings. You don't have to do any of that. You can just say, I'm going to point to whatever they gave me, add it to my thing, and I can just apply it to the project, or I can save it as a template. I can export it or merge it with another shared parameter file. So if I've got multiple shared parameter files, I can merge them. All sorts of things you can do here. So that's kind of the overview of the parameter scheduler and what you can do. But so it's not just for the content creators. Of course, the content creators will want to have templates and different things. But even like I showed, if you've just got users and their stuff just isn't working, very quickly you can pull parameter sources from different sources, or you can just fix a schedule automatically. All right, so let's go to the next tool, which is the project setup tool. This one I would probably say is the second most popular, but it's only not as popular because most people think that it's only for those people who first set up the project, which in some cases is kind of true. Let me find, let's see, let me just find which session of Revit, this one. All right, so I'm opening up this one because I have essentially no views and no sheets. And I'm gonna go to the project setup tool. So in the project setup tool, the number one thing it's known for is it's like, I can create views and sheets and dependent views very quickly for an entire project. Hundreds of them, essentially instantly. I can create templates. But here's a couple other things. So the first project setup thing, you can copy some things from the linked model. You can say, hey, I want 1 space per room. Let's just go ahead and do that because I don't think there's any spaces in here. So it says, okay, you had 91 rooms. I went ahead and created 91 spaces with the exact same name. So if you want, you can also rename them. If the room names change and you want your spaces to match, you can go ahead and hit rename, and it will make sure that those stay up to date. Another important thing is scope boxes. Scope boxes are important to make sure that you're showing the same exact area that the linked model is showing. So let's go ahead and just hit copy there too, because I don't have any scope boxes in my model. And there's 2, area A and area B, that I'll probably want to mimic or use in my dependent views. Then over here on the right, I'm going to skip the rooms for now. Over here on the right, you've got this coordinate systems review. This one, most of the time you're not going to need it, but when you get a model update, something happens and something isn't lining up, things start breaking, jumping, whatever, this is the first place I come, is it will tell me, hey, am I still origin to origin? Do my origins match? Now, these are all relative to your current project internal unit. So when it says shared coordinates, this shared coordinates may not match what is typed into your shared coordinate, like into your survey point or whatever else, but it is relative to this origin. Everything is relative to the origin, but that allows you to do a direct comparison between multiple models. So every single model will have the same exact relation to the origin, and you can tell, hey, my shared coordinates and my survey point are not the same as my project base point, which maybe they don't need to, but maybe it might say, hey, maybe I should acquire those or whatever else. But there's a lot of things you can figure out just by knowing those coordinate systems. So let's get right into it. If I want to create sheets, if the project manager already has a list of sheets, I can just edit in Excel and I can just paste them in. If you already know, here's the list of sheets I want you to create, or I can actually come in here and I can type them. I can say E101, whatever, and some name. I can create my list in here or I can paste it in from Excel or whatever else. Or more often than not, what I'll do is I'll build using a template. And you can save lots of templates. You can have a healthcare template. You can have a hospitality template, a retail template, or whatever else. And let me just show you real quick. There's a video on this, so if I probably won't spend too much time, but some of it would just have to necessarily go through. I've got sheets per level, and I've got sheets per project. So some projects, or all projects, you're gonna have some sheets that only appear once. Like you're gonna only have one cover sheet. You're not gonna have a cover sheet for every single level. But just so we understand how this works, I'm just gonna use Mickey, Donald, Goofy. There we go. So now what this is saying is that for every level in my project, I want to create a list that has a Mickey sheet for that level, a Donald sheet for that level, and a Goofy sheet. So I know that every single level I'm going to have, maybe it's a lighting plan. Every single level I'm going to have a HVAC plan, whatever it is, an interior finish plan. There's also this parapet level. You know what? I probably don't want to use that, so I'm just going to hit delete. Instantly, as I change things here, all of my parapet sheet, this is just a list. None of this has been created yet, but that all those sheets got removed from here. And I'm like, okay, that looks good. I'm going to go ahead and just hit create sheets. Done. It's instantly, you've got a whole bunch of sheets. You can see them down here in your project browser just popped up. So I've got sheets. Same thing for views. Views, oh, and just real quick, if you wanted to see the linked architectural sheets, you can actually see, oh, how did they number them? How did they name them? I can actually copy these and then hit append to my sheet list if I wanted to have similar sheets or something like that. So you have access to kind of review the linked model without having to open up a separate session, without having to open up that linked model. So this is all the same thing, just with views. And I could do the same thing. Let me just simplify this, and I can just call this Mickey, Donald, and Goofy. And let's just get rid of the views per project. And so now I've got, for each level, I've got a Mickey, Donald, and Goofy, level 1, level 2, level 3, and roof. So I've got all of my views. I can place them on my sheets automatically. I can also, if I hit, and I can also edit all this in Excel. I can edit my template in Excel. I can edit this list in Excel. I can apply as many view templates as I want. So you can specify it, like every time I create a lighting plan, I want you to use these view templates. I can also, again, click show the settings in my linked model. What's cool about this is it tells you that, hey, they've got dependents. They've got some dependent views. They've split it up, area A and area B. They've got this area plan where they're using crop regions. So you can kind of see, okay, well, we're going to want to have area A and area B plan dependents as well. So I'm not going to place these on the sheets yet. I'm just going to hit create views. And so those views will show up over here. So again, just very quickly, I can fill out all the views I need with all the templates I need for an entire project at once. So next are dependent views. I saw that they've got area A and area B for all their things. So I might say all my level 1 and level 2 plans, I can do all of them, but just for, I can say I want to create an area A and an area B plan. And I'm going to go ahead and just create for selected parent view. So for all those that I selected, it's going to create an area A and an area B plan. And so right now it's creating dependent views. Over here on the project browser, you'll see the little pluses showed up, and I can go in there later if we need to. But what we can also do is, you might say, well, let me match what the linked model did. So I can hit, let's match. When I click on match, anytime I click on these, when I click on level 1, it'll say, hey, I'm going to split yours by, let's say I want to do level 3. So let's select level 3. I can click on this one, which used crop region. So it says, I'm going to crop yours exactly how they crop theirs. Most of these are by the scope boxes. So it's going to, so I'll just, since it's different, we'll just use the same crop region. I'm just going to hit create. And so level 1 and 2 use the scope boxes. Level 3, I've got different crop regions just to match whatever the architect did. Maybe they did something for level 3 that's different, but you have access to do all that. Now, that I don't have the option on this sheet to automatically place them on the views. So what I can do is these last three are where the users are going to spend more time. So the first 4 here, that's like done at the beginning of the project. I just saved days worth of work, but really only affected a few people who were doing the project setup. These 3 are where I keep coming back later and later, where I might have finished phase 1 and then they say, oh, we want all the same views for phase 2. So I can come into here, I can select all of them, or I want, maybe it's only Mickey sheets. So I can search for all of my Mickey sheets. And I can say, I want to duplicate these. And I want to say, find phase 1 in the name and replace with phase 2 or something like that. I haven't set this up with phases, so this isn't going to work, but I can duplicate as many views as I want, all from here, and it'll keep all the same properties. And then I might say, well, for phase 2 sheets, and maybe I do a search for something, I want to change the scope boxes. So I can come in here and I can change all these and say I want all of these to be area A. So you can make whatever changes you want. I can edit this in Excel. I can type in sheet numbers. So I want this one on E00. Let me hit discard changes so I'm not changing the scope boxes, but I can just put this on E00 and put this one on E01. I'm gonna go ahead and just apply that. And what it's gonna do is it's gonna put those sheets in a default location on those sheets. So if I open these sheets, if you notice, these plus marks just showed up. So if I open these, I'll see these views on there. If I hit compute viewport locations, it's going to actually tell me where those are placed on the sheet. And so just for fun, let's go ahead and open these sheets. So there's the default location. And let's manually do these so I can keep my other views open. And what's going to happen sometimes is, you know what, maybe area A, I want to be up here, and area B, I want to be down there, or whatever else. So a lot of times I'll take one of my viewports and I'll put it exactly where I want it. Maybe that's to align with sheet notes or something else. And then when I go back into the tools, so if I go to project setup, I can come and I can say, all right, on the manage views, let me go ahead and hit compute viewport locations. And usually what I'll do is I'll say, okay, I'm going to sort by scope box. And so then I'm going to say, okay, here's all my area A scope boxes. I'm going to take all of those, I'm going to copy this value, and I'm going to paste it into all of my area A. And so then I'm going to copy this value and I'm going to paste it all into my area B. Now, this isn't going to do much right now because these actually aren't on sheets. If they were on sheets, they would show their values and I would be overriding them. But maybe what I want to do is, let me just paste it into one that is on a sheet. And I'm going to go ahead and let's hit apply changes after I move this over so you can see it work. So when I hit apply changes, it's going to say, okay, I'm going to use those coordinates that you gave me, and I'm going to move all of the other ones to match. And right now what it's doing is it's matching the lower left corner of the view, which is right here. I can also say, if I uncheck compute with annotations off, so if I uncheck that, it'll use, so with that checked, it actually uses the viewport. If I have it checked, it uses it with the grids and everything else. So it lines them up in different ways depending on whether you check that. But just like all the other tools, sometimes I want to match a linked model. And so when I click on these options, it says, just so you know, here's where they are. I can say, oh, well, I want to match. So let me just select these and their area. So the architect actually put their area A plans here. So I can just hit paste X and Y to the selected views. And when I do that, I'm going to have my area A plan exactly where the architect put theirs. So apparently the architect put theirs down here. So, but now I match exactly. So if I was flipping the pages, it would line up perfectly with theirs. So that's pretty cool. Just a real quick summary of what's down here. I can apply multiple view template settings to multiple views. So I can select multiple view templates and apply them to all the selected views. I can reset the viewport title position if people have dragged that viewport title all over the place. Minimize annotation crop to bring it in. I can do find and replace. Most of this stuff you can do in the parameter transformer, but it's just really in one location here, specifically for views and sheets. Tag all rooms and or spaces. I can do this. I can tag all rooms in the entire model at once. So that's pretty cool. Let's move on to sheets. Oops, not insert views. We'll get to there. So under sheets, basically it's the same thing. I can do find and replace. I can, I think what most people use this for is if I've got multiple revisions, I don't think this one does, it's only got one revision. Revit will automatically put the revision information in the title block if you've got your title block set up whenever you put a cloud on the sheet. So you'll be able to see every single sheet that has been revised. And it'll be true for anything that was revised here. But if you want to issue additional sheets or have that message appear in the title block, you either have to create a cloud or you have to go to each individual sheet and say, I want to select through the list and say which revision I want it to be in. Or you could just come in here and I want to say, hey, I want all of these sheets to be in the selected revision. And when I hit apply changes, I actually did see it show up here. It's the second line here. I can apply them all at once. The other thing I can do, this is a new feature that you might not see until you do an update, but I can also say, I want to add, I don't know what I want to add, edited by, sure. I can add any other parameter on here. So what some people are doing is they want to sort, so you can sort by here and say, okay, I'm going to sort by all these are true, and I want to set this to X. And what they might be doing is they might be setting a value on their sheet index, or they might be setting a value in another schedule or something else like that, where they say, okay, anything that was revised or anything that's got a certain property, I want to set that property based on my revision information. Again, most of the stuff you can do in the parameter transformer, but with the revisions, this is the only place where you can kind of sort by revision, you can add to revisions, and so you can use that information to set other parameter data just like you can in the parameter transformer. You can also save as a print set. So if I wanted to say, I wanted to search for Mickey, and I can say, okay, here's all my Mickey sheets, and I can say, I want to save this as a print set, and I'm going to call this Mickey sheets. It's done. So if I go into the print dialog now, I'm going to skip that just for sake of time, but if I go to the print dialog, I can see Mickey is there, and I can click on my Mickey sheets and print just this. So I can do sheet sets based on whether it was revised, based on a search of what I searched for or whatever else. I can create print sets pretty quick. Just real quick, the insert views details. This it depends on whether you're using CAD or Revit details, but hopefully you'll be using Revit details at some point. This, just like the parameter scheduler, you can create templates and say, hey, I want a template for different types of details. Maybe it's, hey, my generator details, my whatever, and I can say, okay, here's my 2017 structure. I pulled that from the example Revit file. I can search in a Revit file, so I can open up any Revit file I want, and it will pull out all of the views and details, and you can select whichever ones are in there, and you can add them to the list. So again, like the parameter scheduler, I can say, oh, I want these 3 details from another project. I want these from our standard detail libraries. I want to create a template, whatever. And I'll just highlight, say 3 of these. I'm going to click the show preview. When I click on the show preview, it generates the preview for each one. And maybe I don't know whether I need footing section 1 or 2. I don't know, so let me compare them. So I can come in here and see those side by side before they get imported into Revit. And then I can hit import. When I do that, it will add them as views into your view things, but it doesn't put them on a sheet. So you would then have to then drag them onto a sheet. So it's a two-step process, but you will be able to use your templates to drag lots of views in at once. So that's a pretty powerful tool. If you're using AutoCAD details, then that last tab in there is probably useless for you at this time. But anyway, it definitely can save you time. So the next tool that we're going to go through, I realize we've only got about 12 minutes left. So we're gonna very quickly just show how this works. And on this one, let me open up the parameter linker. So the parameter linker, it allows you to connect one property from one element and tie it to a property or a parameter of another element. So in this case, let me just hide some of these. And there's a video on this where, so this one I tied the work plane is flipped property to some coloring of this and some visibility parameters of this. This is not necessarily a practical example. It's more like showing that I can tie whatever I want. I mean, like the rotation of this is tied to the rotation of these fixtures. So it's easier to see, I guess, if I turn on that extrusion. So wherever that's pointed, it's going to rotate to that. So just a quick thing that's shown in the video, but let's go really quickly to a more practical thing. So I can do things through a linked model. I can do things, whatever. But if I change one thing, it can change somewhere else. And I can have it set to automatic like I did on that project. Or what I usually actually do is I do not set them to automatic because usually I want to review them. So in this example, I have my electrical single line here on this sheet, and I've got my floor plan here. And what I've done is, if I change the data in this panel, it changes the data in here. But with the auto update turned off, if I change the name to, I don't know, if I just type in some B's in here, this H1A BBBBB does not match this H1A. So you might first say, well, why didn't it auto update? Well, that's because I didn't turn it on. That's because I want to manually check these later. So I can say parameter linker. When I open the parameter linker, this one's already set up that has my items linked. We won't have enough time to spend a lot of detail on how that works, but I can quickly go through it. I'm just going to sort these by name because it's going to make it easier. So I've got all my equipment name here. If I scroll down, I see a red one, or I can click on expand all that discrepancies, which might make it even easier for me to locate things if I've got a lot of them. And it says, oh, there's a discrepancy. Some of the stuff matches, it's green, but there's this name that doesn't match. So what I can do is I can select this and I can click update all, which will update all discrepancies, or I can just do update the selected. In this case, it's the same thing. I'm just gonna hit update all, and it's gonna say, okay, I'm gonna push the values so they match. So now they match perfectly. You can also see here in the single line, it's now got the right name. So everything is coordinated. So sometimes I might want to coordinate mechanical equipment parameters with the electrical connectors, or it might be diagrams to floor plans. It might be linked view settings to current view settings or different things like that. If I wanted to push the opposite direction, I can just hit swap. I can swap multiple at a time, whatever else. But the one on the left always pushes to the one on the right. It's called source and destination, unless you enable auto sync. If you enable auto sync, it'll go both directions automatically because it's all live. So if I change it here, it'll change it there instantly and back and forth. So we are running out of time, so I won't have time to show you that. But just real quick, just so we understand a little bit, because this is probably the hardest tool to master because of the way that it does a lot of complicated things, and you may not understand what it's doing. So first, I can select elements. So the biggest thing that people don't understand is you select elements that are linked. Once you link them, they're linked by their unique ID. So they are linked. They're not linked by a particular value. They're linked element to element. It knows who its match is. So I can choose that match by picking one element and picking another. I can just pick two elements. Or what I usually do is I do it by parameter values. So I can say, hey, if I've got a piece of electrical equipment and I've got a detail item and they share the same equipment name, then I want you to create a link between them. And so it links those elements. It doesn't link those parameters. It's linking the elements based on that rule. And I can create rules. So this right now, if I select here, I could select some elements. I'm going to go just to manage saved rules, and there's an electrical equipment, and I'm going to go ahead and hit edit rule in the creation tab. This will take a minute to regenerate here, but it fills out. So it's showing me I've got electrical equipment with name, and I've got on this side it's detail items with name. If they match, I want you to show them here for me. Show me all the matches, and then that way I can say, okay, create a link. Once they're linked, it says I know who I'm sharing with. It doesn't necessarily know what I'm sharing. So that's the confusing part. First, it's who am I sharing with? Then the second part is what am I sharing? So nothing showed up here. That's because they're already linked. So if I uncheck hide existing links, it shows everything that's linked. I can show mismatches. So if I had an extra panel on my floor plan that didn't exist on my diagram, it'll actually show me, hey, these are floor plan elements. And it'll also show me here are diagram elements that don't have a match. And then I can actually use this create place matching element. So if I click on it and I hit create, it will create the matching type of whatever's selected on the destination. It will create it. It'll jump to the window and allow you to place it. So you have to place them one at a time. It won't allow you to create all of them at once, but so it'll link everything at once. So that's when you know, okay, I know who I'm sharing with. Now, what am I sharing? That's these sets, these current parameter set. And I can edit sets where if I wanted to share additional information, I can say, I want bus amps to be controlled to link to description. So whatever element one has bus amps, I want it to share that information with description. And I can just add it to this current set. So now a whole bunch of stuff just went red. That's because all this is live. It automatically adds it to that rule or that parameter set to all of the things that have that parameter set. And I can see which parameter set I'm using, single lines, or if I'm using, there's default light length, some other things that I have in here, but you create those parameter sets of whatever information you want to share. So if I go ahead and I'm going to delete that so everything goes back to green, it's no longer sharing that information. So once it's sharing information, you can tell whether it's matching or not by whether it's red or green. Okay. A few more minutes. I know we haven't saved a lot of time for questions, but I promise I'll stick around for a little bit. I'm just going to quickly tell you about two other tools so you're aware of them. One is the Draft Excel. This one, the parameter transform is getting the Excel data into Revit. Draft Excel is if I have an Excel file. Let me just. If I have an Excel file and I want it to look like in Revit what it looks like in Excel, I can just select any Excel file. I can specify a range or a named range. In this case, I'll just do the summary print area and I'm going to just process the file. And what that does is it's going to determine all of the cells and the data and everything that's in there, and it's actually going to draw it in a drafting view in Revit to look like it looks like in Excel. So in Revit, there's a lot of formatting issues. You can't get their schedules to look like Excel. If you want it to look like in Revit like it looks like in Excel, you can use this tool, and it keeps track of whether it's current and needs to be updated. So let me just hit open file just so you can see what it looks like. So this is what it looks like in Excel. Let's see if I can try and show you both at the same time. So it's like, hey, this is what it looks like in Excel. This is what it looks like in Revit. It's like what you see is what you get on both ends. If I came in here and I don't know, let's say I change this to red and I save this, the next time that I open up the tool, instead of showing current, you might have a list of anything that's in there. It's going to have red. It's going to say not current over here in the status. So I can just hit update all selected. Hold on. So I'm going to hit update selected. And so before I print out a job, I might want to update all of them that aren't current. The question I get is, does it automatically update them when you open Revit? Does it automatically keep track of them? No, at this time it does not. It automatically tracks which ones are updated and which ones are not, but just mostly because of multiple users and the issue with work sharing, that kind of thing. You have to check to see, you have to open the tool to see the list of what's not current. So now, and you can turn off colors and shadings. There's some options there. Last tool, we have less than 2 minutes. Guess the element tagger. Let me open up a lighting plan. This will be the last thing, then I promise we're done, and I'll stick around for any questions. And we can also respond to questions and emails if there's something that we weren't able to cover. But I think it's more important that we cover some of these things than pause for some of those questions. So on this lighting plan, I purposely created some tags. Here we go. We're jumping around. All right, here in the upper left, you might open up a plan and be like, what were they thinking? All these tags are all over the place. Nothing is consistent. So if I highlight these fixtures, and I don't have to highlight like new for lots of views, but the element tagger, what it allows you to do is you can create templates, and each template you can create tag settings. So each tag setting knows where it's going to be placed, if it's going to be offset from one of the corners, the insertion point, or whatever else, what its offset is going to be. You can specify the offset based on parameter values. You can have lots of things to fix rotation, or to have it, no matter where it's rotated, it's going to be in the correct spot, lots of different things. But the point is, I can just come in here. I'm going to use the option to delete existing tabs because I want to replace what's there, and I'm just going to hit apply. So the ideal situation is I can lay out all my stuff, and then I can tag all selected. I can tag an entire view. I can tag an entire project. I can do whatever I want to create all the tags that match our tag placement standards. And you can also say only tag element if. So I can say I only want to tag elements if it's of a certain type, or if it's of a certain size, or if it's of a certain rotation, or it's on a, whatever I want to do. I can create multiple rules that, okay, use this tag if it's this type of element, use this tag if it's that type of element. I could actually select multiple of these. I could tag fixtures, mechanical equipment, and a whole bunch of stuff all at the same time, and each one will find its appropriate host and tag it in an appropriate location.